Welcome to another episode of Shots from the Winchester podcast, where we explore leadership topics from a variety of perspectives. This podcast is brought to you by Greencastle Consulting, your nation's premier strategy execution firm.
Right on. Well,
let's jump in.
Cool. Yeah, hey, welcome back. Another episode of Shots from the Winchester. It's RJ, Al, and we're going to let Amanda and Kate introduce themselves. I don't know who wants to go first.
Go ahead.
All right. Well, my name's Amanda. I've been consulting with Greencastle for over 4 years now, specializing in IT implementation projects in the utilities industry.
Nice. Nice. And then Kate?
Kate Heffelfinger with Greencastle for a couple years, principal consultant. Right now I'm focusing on strategy consulting, but also do similar work to Amanda, IT, project management, change management, process improvement, the whole gambit.
Yep. Nice. Now, RJ, you came up with this theme that we're going to have a conversation about today.
I did.
A lot of it is because you and I, at separate times, have done our own research as far as like what is out there as far as consulting stuff. Like what kind of conversations are people having about that kind of stuff? You want to jump in a little bit more about that?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think we ran the idea past you guys and literally got like laughs immediately because like for every stigma, there's like a grain of truth to it, I think. And it's especially true, I would say, in the consulting industry. Where like the story I always like to tell on this is like in my final interview, when I was interviewing to be a consultant, Joe and Eric, our CEO and president, literally asked me like, hey, like what kind of like consultant do you want to be? Like, do you want to be a project manager? You want to be a change manager? And I was like, to be frank, I don't know what any of those words mean. I was like, I've asked my friends what they do as consultants, and they're like very vague descriptions of like, I help efficiencies and
all the buzzwords.
Yeah, exactly. So like I think it can at times be one of those professions, both for like people who are looking to enter into it as a consultant, and also for like clients who are thinking about bringing in consultants, where like there can be an ickiness associated with it if you haven't experienced it before. And there's also, I would say, a variety of it, right? Like there's a difference between like what we do and what other firms maybe do and what other folks have experienced with
it. I love this. So when friends and family ask, what do you do for a living? And I say, I'm in consulting. They're like, okay, we got you. Like the Wolf on Wall Street type stuff, right? Couldn't be further from
nothing.
Right. That's wild. And so our conversation today is about stigmas. Stigmas potential clients have about consulting firms.
Yeah, essentially, I think we'll break it into two pots. Like the one end of it being like, hey, if I'm a business owner, or I'm some big Fortune 500 company, a utility provider, and I'm thinking, hey, I may need some expert help on this. I've got a big project. My internal team maybe isn't resourced or knowledgeable, and I'm considering a consultant. We'll address some of those, and then on the flip end of it, we'll do, if I'm somebody, like rewind 2 years ago for me, who's considering a career in consulting, but I don't know the first thing about it, what should I expect? Obviously it's different everywhere, but all right, I'm going to throw the first one out there. I'll just see what the group reaction is here. So I think this is, at least in terms of when I've looked, the first thing on the Google search results is consultants generally lack business and industry experience. They're just like effectively like they either have like a recent education like an MBA or just like some certifications, but don't have the industry knowledge to like actually drive impact for a business.
And that's the big one too, right? Like you need to have, to be successful in that consulting position, I think you do need to have some of that like industry specific knowledge, right? You don't need to, for us, for me specifically, I think I worked with a electric utility company in the past, right? And while I was not a journeyman or a lineman, climbing up the poles and doing some of the electrical work, you need to understand the differences between distribution, production, transmission, things like that in order to speak the language of your clients and in order to kind of progress things along and kind of be all on the same page, right? So I think it's important, a lot of times what we do is you come in and you kind of do like a utility 101, specifically for that example. But I do think, you do need to have that background knowledge in some areas, right? Like I'm not going to go and if I'm going to help a client, implement a finance system, like I'm not going to be able to understand their finances to a T because that's kind of very niche and specific. But having that knowledge and being able to speak their terminology, will make a consultant successful in any kind of job that they do.
It makes sense. Yeah.
I think you definitely need the foundation to have that common language with your client and to make sure that they have confidence in you, that you at least at a high level understand the field that they're operating in. But what's interesting is like some of these industries are so massive and so complex, and they have like subcultures and niches that you'll be working with someone who's been in that industry for decades, working at the same company for decades, and they still have knowledge gap as well. So it's a point of managing the knowledge gap you have, but also understanding what gaps are in the room while you're talking through solutions and strategy to make sure that you can bring in those experts and those people that are working in those niche areas to offer their own perspectives.
I was in a meeting once, and not to cut you off, but we were in a meeting once where we had people who were a part of the company for, 10, 15, 20 years, and there were a couple acronyms being thrown around, and we kind of, paused and put our hand up like, hey, I'm the new guy here, right? Like, I don't know what's going on. Can you kind of explain what that acronym means, and how you're using it? And they went through and explained it, and then somebody else who was there, quite a few years was like, that's not what I thought it was. I haven't been using it like that for many, many years. So just like the level set and get everybody on the same page, is kind of important too.
Yeah, I've found that in my experience as well. And when we were doing remote work with COVID, it was a little more difficult to like look at the faces in the room. But now that we're, co-locating again, it's easy to look around and be like, oh, these people don't know what's being discussed. And then you can be kind of like that sacrificial lamb and throw your hand up and say, hey, I'm the new guy. Can you explain it to me?
Yeah.
When you know that you're really level setting for everyone who has that same like look on their face.
It's really interesting because so like for me, I've been doing video and editing for, over 20 years. Like I can consult on that because I already know that. I know the backgrounds of that. So it makes sense to have having an idea of what's going on and what you're consulting about to be better and more efficient for the client that you're working for. And it's like you said, you had some experience already going into the industry, which is that's your best bet.
Yeah, I think in a perfect scenario, but I think you both kind of did actually hit on something, at least, granted, I guess we're all trained Greencastle consultants now, so similar training. But like one of the big things that I kept hearing on a recurring basis was like, hey, don't be afraid to like be the sacrificial lamb and effectively just like ask like, hey, what is that? Or like, why do we do that way? Because chances are like when someone has to explain something in depth like that, they're going to realize there's a gap in the existing team. And even though you like put yourself out there as like, hey, I don't know what you're saying, all of a sudden you have this credibility because you're like, wow, that person who like knows nothing about our business or our industry was able to spot that, like instantly gives you this like street cred effectively with your clients. So I think that's a really important point. Something folks are like thinking about.
Absolutely. Number 2 you have on here, consultants just tell us what we already know.
Yeah, I think this is like, I mean, if for anyone who's like following, getting consultant content pushed to them through social media, it's like, I think there was a recent one where like, sorry, oops, cut that. A large firm told the city of New York City that like it would be more efficient for trash collection if people put trash in trash cans. Like they paid like millions of dollars from the city of New York to this consulting firm to literally tell them like that's a joke, right? Like, and I'm proud to say I don't think we do any kind of work like that. We're we're just telling people like, hey, it would be a lot better if you just like used the system. But I think this is one, and I'll kick it to you guys for this, where like we don't really tell them what they know. We just tell them like what's right and back it up with kind of information and like practical data. Yeah. And allow them to kind of make a data-driven decision. Yeah. I feel like I'm selling thing right now.
You want to hop on it?
Yeah.
I want to hear what you have to say first.
I think, so anytime we come into any sort of engagement new, right, one of the first things that we always do is create, it's an ILG, right, Initial Leaders Guidance, which kind of helps us assess the situation when we come in. Sometimes our assessment of the current situation with the client could be, it does match what the client already knows, but I think it's how you respond to that assessment that kind of triggers the differences, right? So coming in, if we assess and it matches with the client, a lot of times, like if they're calling us, it's because they don't know what to do next or how to solve it. Yeah. And that's kind of where the consultant kind of, provides the value or makes the most bang for the buck when we do come in. And I think that's kind of really the difference of what makes us valuable and what we provide to the client. Sometimes, our assessment could be way off, and then we're even providing more value to the client because they're not looking at it from a specific perspective or a certain viewpoint, or they're missing gaps that we kind of identify right off the gap. So sometimes, yes, I do think we kind of do communicate back to what the client already thinks they know. But I think there's like an extra step or a little bit more that they're missing is really where I think we provide our value.
Yeah.
What do you say?
Yeah, I agree. And the work that I've been doing, I find there's really no scenario where I'm telling you something that doesn't then have to be followed by an action or a series of actions. So it's like if we're going to talk about something you already know, okay, but how are we going to get there? How are we going to do?
Yeah.
And that's where I think we really add the value, because we're bringing all of our prior experience where we might not be, industry experts, but we are experts in this process. And we do know what needs to happen to make you successful to accomplish this XYZ. We've experienced the pitfalls, so we know how to navigate around them or what to expect. So something that may pop up that surprises you might not surprise us because we've been there, done that.
Yeah.
Every project is different. Every industry is different. But all the problems within project management feel very familiar.
Yeah, that's a great point.
And sometimes when you're digging a trench, you don't always know how to get out of it.
Yeah.
It's you're deep in it, and it might be obvious. Yeah, let's just climb out, but it may not be as simple as that. It might be too deep, or there's just like not enough, information to really understand how to do it. So like sometimes I guess it is just that, like, all right, I know what I need to do, but I just can't face it right now.
Yeah.
You need somebody to come in and just help you work that through.
Right. Or you've like talked yourself into like, this is so much more complex than it actually is.
Yes.
Like in a lot of cases where they're like, hey, we have this really unique business problem, and like the reality is like, hey, if your IT department just talked to your business operations department a little better, or like you had one meeting with these people in a room together, all of a sudden like you'd realize they're saying something, it's just the wrong version of like what is supposed to be said to you.
Yeah.
I think problem solving is so big in consulting, and a stigma that I come across a lot, like within our own project team, is, well, consultants and project managers take too much of an academic approach. And like what you learn in your books doesn't necessarily translate well to the real project and the real operation. And I have worked with people that are very academic, and they say, oh, well, it should be easy. It shouldn't be that hard. It's like, well, you're saying that it shouldn't be that hard, but you're in a room full of very smart, dedicated people, and it is proving to be that hard. So like we're going to need to adjust what the rule book says we should do to make sure we're doing something that's effective in this setting and with this group of people. So
Nice.
It's like all that makes sense until like you get like human emotion into it. And like you have to like actually manage. It's like there's a step in there that's like manage people's emotions. And you're like, how?
Huge.
Yeah, like,
Especially
how
with
do I-
change management.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, how do I do that one?
Yeah.
Or do they say like a street smart versus like book smart?
Yeah.
Like it's just you can't have both.
Yeah,
It's like
absolutely.
same
I
deal.
agree. Yeah, it's like you have to be able to read the room and realize when
Yeah,
it's like, okay,
that's a
like
big part.
I should
Yeah.
probably make like a raid log right now, but like they don't want to hear another acronym today, so like we're gonna couch that one for the week,
Yeah.
and then we'll revisit it when we got some energy back in the room.
Yeah.
That's fine. All right, so this one, we might end up having to cut this, but I'm gonna bring
I'm
this one
excited
out.
now. I know.
Is this a hot take?
I don't think it's a hot take. I mean, I guess I think one of the most common objections from the industry side of the house is that, like, for what they typically pay for a consultant, maybe for like a month or two, they could probably get pretty close to like a full-time staffer. Like, if you brought in a team of consultants, like, you're probably talking somewhere in the ballpark of like a full-time employee's salary over the course of a year in some cases, depending on the level of the problem, the expertise, the whatever it is. But it's not cheap. There's no like, it's not like you can go and like get one for a couple $100, right? Where you're talking thousands of dollars in most cases, if not like tens of thousands of dollars to have these folks on. So I'm assuming both of you have like experienced those pushbacks and had to kind of communicate value in a way to say like, hey, you are paying this much, but here is what you're getting out of it. So like, how do those discussions, I guess, go?
So I look at this from two different perspectives.
Yeah.
So I'll let Amanda go first because I think she'll probably hit on the one and then I'll get the other.
Okay.
Oh, geez. Feels like a lot of pressure.
That's all good.
So I have found that the cost of a consultant isn't a problem until it's like the end of the fiscal year and you're looking at your budget, or maybe you're over budget and trying to figure out where you can lean out. And then at that point, I've already kind of proven the value and the credit. So it's a matter of, well, where do we find the money? And if we can't, like, we're just going to cry a little bit. But I mean, I don't want to say like bad things, but I have worked with consultants that aren't really worth what they cost.
Okay.
And you see that maybe there's a lack of care. You know, I think as Greencastle consultants, we know how important it is to care about the details of what you're doing and about the higher level strategy, but we're caring more about the process and the work. We're caring about the people to the left and right of us. We're aware of what adjacent teams are doing. Even if we don't work with them on the day-to-day, we still know that we need to be connected with them because we're all working within the same, like, you know, mission set, if you will.
Yeah.
So that's all, you know, things that are drilled into us as veterans that translates really well to the space. But there are consultants who they have blinders on, or they're very focused on self-preservation, or they don't want to take that extra work because it's outside of their FTE or outside of their contract. And then it creates this like us versus them, like, well, you're not part of the team because you're working in that place of self-preservation. So I've seen that unfold, and it is unfortunate, and it does create a weird dynamic on the team and a strong argument for, well, you're not worth what you cost.
Yeah.
And I've been on a project with that's, you know, very, very situation, and it does create friction amongst the different team members, and it's unnecessary friction, right? Because the client's already got their own set of problems. We don't need to add more to it, right? The other take I have on this is, so you touch on the, you know, the consultant ROI versus, you know, failure of the project type deal. The other one is a lot of times clients will come to us and be like, well, you know, I think based off of the rates that you provided and what, you know, we would need to pay you, why can't I just go and kind of resource this internally myself, right? And then that way we can kind of cut the cost and kind of, you know, alleviate that pressure. And the kind of the pushback that I give on that is, when you typically, not always, but typically when you reach out to a consultant, especially in Greencastle's case, like your project is failing, right? It is absolute dumpster fire, and you are bringing us in with extinguishers, and we're going to just turn the ship around, get it sailing, and we're going to hit all our deadlines and meet all our marks, and everything is going to be great at the end of the day. That's typically what happens, right? So the purpose of us coming in and helping to kind of course correct here is very limited in nature, right? There aren't any current engagements that we have at Greencastle, to my knowledge, that are, you know, long-standing and would kind of mimic a full-time resource, right? We come in, you know, for a year contract or, you know, 6 months, whatever the project is. You know, full force, kind of, you know, storm Normandy to get that project back. And then we remove ourselves and we move on to the next engagement or the next dumpster fire, right? Like you can't sustain that full-time resource in that capacity. It just is not good business practice. And when people kind of see that and kind of get the wheel spinning, and it makes sense to them and it kind of clicks, like, hey, I'm bringing in a temporary resource with these extraordinary skills to help me out. And then when I don't need them, that's it. There's no like love lost. Like everybody leaves on amicable terms and we move on to the next thing, right?
Yeah, it's like mission accomplished if we work ourselves out of a job.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Kind of the mindset you need.
And I think there's like a tacit knowledge that experienced consultants bring that's hard to like define the value that brings. And I've been on projects where they bring in internal resources to work the PMO or work these projects, and the internal resources are kind of sold this bill of goods, and they go in thinking that it's going to be smooth sailing and they're going to have nice professional development, and then they walk into like just carnage and chaos, and they're like, this is not what I thought it was going to be, and they look for a quick route out where, you know, we understand what we're walking into, and we still walk into it.
I think we run.
Yeah,
I thrive in chaos.
Yeah.
Exactly.
It's like a firefighter, you know, like, you know, if you see a fire, you're going to run in there and you're going to take it out, clean it up as much as you can, and like put it out, you know, so.
It's like a lot of other professions where like the DIY project management thing is like so infectious, where like people are like, like you just make some slides and you manage Excel workbooks. Like I have people who know how to use Excel, and I have people who know how to use PowerPoint. Like, pretty sure I can DIY this. Like it's the same like I thought I could like, install a toilet at my house, and like right up till the moment when I couldn't, and then I needed a plumber. So like it's the same thing with I feel like that folks hit a point where they're like, hey, like turns out we couldn't, like, and then all of a sudden the price tag is like, all right, well, it is what it is. So,
and it's funny because I've heard this phrase before, is like companies don't have the money to do it right the first time, but they have the money to do it twice.
That's funny.
They think they're going to find some cost savings here, cost savings there, and then it's like, yikes.
Right. Or like, it's delayed like infinitely because like you said, you have somebody who's like bringing internal resource in, like, well, their day job didn't go away.
Exactly.
Like, so now they're splitting time between this thing. So. Yeah, it's like a buy once, cry once kind of thing.
I've never heard that before.
I definitely want to get some. I think the client side of it is super important, but I think the majority of the listeners here, at least from what we hear, are like interested in a career in consulting. Might be veterans, might be considering Greencastle. Greencastleconsulting.com/careers. But I want to ask you guys, how did you make the decision to get into consulting? Was it like always on the path, or just something you stumbled into?
I did it. So I have my background is in engineering, right? And then I worked in finance, so it makes total sense. So But I wanted to get into project management because my mom was actually doing it, and that was what she did for her MBA. We ended up going to the same program at different times. So I got my MBA in project management before I had even did any sort of official project type work. But in the Army, as I was a logistical officer. So we did all sorts of project work with moving equipment and supplies and materials and things of that nature. And I just was always drawn to it. So, naturally I had a good resume of like non-traditional project work, but in a sense it's project work. And that's kind of where I feel the most comfortable and kind of thriving in that chaos of, am I going to meet my deadlines of these shipments? And, are these soldiers going to eat, or do they going to have enough food? Things like that. So I didn't necessarily think that I was going to wind up in consulting. It was just like, Greencastle popped up into the picture, and I'm like, okay, I could do this. Is this going to be a good fit for me? Let me try it out. And then, like they say, the rest is history. Like just a natural fit, like perfect for both sides. Love what I do. Different schedule every day, different set of problems every day. The piece that I really like about consulting is, helping others and in being invested in others' problems and bringing solutions to them. It's not, a lot of times, it comes up, consulting is like a one-way street, and that couldn't be further from the case, right? Like it's a two-way conversation. You're building relationships, establishing them with your clients. I text my clients, like on a daily basis, just about this and that, and, personal and professional type stuff. So it's just like building that relationship and helping people solve their problems is such a good feeling.
Nice.
I mean, my background is in supply chain logistics, and then I was a log officer.
Represent.
And then I was a log officer in the Army, and I feel like everything in the Army is project management. So deployed with someone who was connected with Greencastle, and they reached out and was like, hey, I think you do really well here. So just kind of applied in good faith, and they were right. I am doing well. I'm enjoying it. I think a lot of what we learn in the experiences we have translate very well to project management, and call it what you want: change management, project management, process improvement. It's all just leadership, right? It's leading processes and leading people, and it's problem solving. And what I really enjoy about consulting is you're on a project and then it ends and you're on a different project. So even though you're working for the same company, you're seeing new people, new problems, you're learning different industries, and I have a lot of curiosity. So I enjoy like the exposure to new things and kind of being able to move around while still leveraging the same skills and tools and just sharpening them as you go.
So what I'm gathering from both of you is that you enjoy solving problems. Like you like puzzles, things like that too.
Oh yeah, major nerd.
Okay, all right. So that all tracks. That's pretty cool. I also wonder, because my wife also is like project manager. Everything at house is all organized. We have names on things. We have baskets that have titles written on them, so I know exactly where everything is. We have the tech box. Is that you guys too?
Oh yeah.
She's a woman after my heart. I love that.
That's amazing. Yeah, I feel like there's
Okay.
like two types of them. It's like either super organized
Yeah.
or like complete whirlwind
Let-
disarray around
Yeah.
them, but like know where everything is in the whirlwind.
Let me ask this though, and
Yeah.
this will be
Yeah.
like a true testament, right? Does she order her closet by the colors of the rainbow? Like, are her clothes hung?
Yes.
Love it.
Even the
Love
books
it.
in the bookshelf are color organized.
That's really smart.
Yeah.
That's me. I have my closet and my books are on.
Do you know that I spent like
That's great.
This isn't a fashion show, but it will be for the next 5 minutes. I spent like 5 minutes today looking because I have black jeans on,
Yeah.
and I couldn't find a polo that like this is almost like too close to the black, but like I
Right.
couldn't find. I have a maroon one. I have no idea where it is.
Right.
But if my closet was organized, like I probably would.
Colors of the
Oh,
rainbow.
yeah.
Ragey bib.
That's
A stitch in
smart.
time.
Yeah.
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 That's pretty cool. I thought that. So I was like, okay, maybe this is like a consulting thing, you know,
Yeah.
like, you know, very, very organized, very structured.
Because that's how we are, at least for me, that I find it. You're probably the same way. Like, that's how I find I'm successful in these absolute dumpster fires, right?
Yeah.
Like, you just organization and strong communication and pulling everybody together, developing that common operating picture, and then from there, like, lock and step together forward. That is how I solve problems, big problems too, and it's replicable and it's easy stuff, right? Like,
Yeah.
okay, not everybody is super type A, but like it's
Yeah.
easy things that you can do like that.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's like in one part, like, you know, you guys chose the profession, but in another way, like you were like chosen for the like this is the type of personality you always had. It just
Yeah.
like naturally turns out it fits at like
profession
large
fits the
industry,
personality.
you know, big businesses. Like
Yeah.
they have big complex problems. They don't know what they're doing. Like, well, it sounds a lot like the Army. Like it just needs people to like, you know, get the boat on track. So,
That's pretty cool. What else do you want to get into?
yeah, so I want to definitely ask some questions. Like these were things that, you know, I thought about, and
Okay.
like I was like hammering Glassdoor trying to figure out like if life was going to be terrible or great as a consultant. But I think the biggest one, right, like in all the consulting memes that I see is just like this atrocious work-life balance. Like the joke is like you're not billing like 80 hours a week. Like that's not actually consulting.
Right.
So I would love to hear how, I guess, you know, we'll pretend that your bosses aren't listening, but how's the work-life balance been, your experience? Yeah.
I need time to emotionally pull myself together to answer this question.
Yeah.
It's honestly it is a struggle, right? Because there's always so much work that needs to get done, and there's just never enough hours in the day to do it. It honestly and it truly, for me, it comes down to setting those expectations and building up those boundaries when you establish that relationship with your client, and just, you know, being mindful of what those boundaries are. So for me, so I have a 16-month-old daughter at home right now. So pre-child, I would absolutely, you know, work 50, 60 hours a week and kind of do what I need to do to be successful and set myself apart from the other vendors that we're working with and the clients. Now it's like, okay, at, you know, 4 o'clock, I have a hard deadline because I need to go pick her up from daycare. We need to eat, get her, you know, a tubby tonight and get her into bed. And then after that, once she goes to sleep, then you know, if there's things to do in you know, I'm conscious of deadlines, then I'll log back on for an hour or two, depending on what the work, you know, what the work requirements are. But I set that expectation, that boundary very upfront with my clients initially, and they're very respectful of it. And, you know, we have not missed deadlines, and work is still getting done. So I do think there is you know, just in general, the consulting industry, I do think it's obviously situationally dependent, but I do think there is a requirement to kind of provide that, you know, beyond that 40-hour work week. You're not going to get around that. But I think it's very doable, and you don't have to add additional stress to yourself if you can kind of do it in a smart way where everybody is on board with it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, everything Kay said. So I'm more of a morning bird, so I'll log on early, like 4 o'clock in the morning, 5 o'clock in the morning. I'll work for a couple of hours, make sure all of my administrative work is set aside, so that way during core hours, I'm available to the team members and to the folks that I know are going to need me. So it's a lot like parenthood, right? Where like you take care of yourself last, right? You carve out time where you can to make sure your stuff is done. But what I have found is the client is appreciative of that. And they do generally recognize, like, you know, that you are working these crazy hours to make sure that they're successful. And then the reward of that is when you have that family emergency, or you have, your kids home from sick and you're like, I'm so sorry, but like, I'm not going to be available today, or just call me on my cell if something emerges. And there's no like anger or consternation in those moments. So it's very much like a give and take. I've never been in a situation with a client where I've had some sort of family emergency and they were just like, too bad, too sad, like your contract. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah, I think it's huge. It's like you said, both of you kind of like, if you can get organized and prioritize the stuff, there's definitely going to be those moments where it's 8 o'clock and you have to hop on and do something, but like those become fewer and farther in between. If you're setting the expectations, actually prioritizing the stuff that needs to happen and like getting it done when it works for you. I'm the same way. Like I would be up at like 5, 6 a.m. and like, okay, hey, I've got like some Excel thing I need to run through. I don't need anyone's input. I don't need anyone to be in a meeting. Let me just spend an hour like burning through this workbook right now. And then during those like core working hours when people actually do take meetings, it's like, okay, I'm available to be there if I need to be on a call. And if not, like I've got some other, maybe some free time where I can breathe.
Right.
And that administrative stuff, that work is the absolute worst. If anybody could come up with a way to like just get rid of it.
Automate.
Yes.
Automate ourselves out of a job.
I know.
Power BI people.
Yeah, that's true. That's a whole other world. That's where my technical knowledge falls off a cliff.
Oh yeah.
That's funny.
Well, like playing with AI agents and stuff like that. Like that's a whole nother energy. That's
I can use one, but it's the people that can build them that scare me. And I'm like, I don't know how you're doing this. This is
wizardry.
Yeah, literally.
It's magic.
Yeah.
Let's see, what else do we have here? The consultant lifestyle involves too much travel and instability.
I think this is definitely one. Less so with travel. I think post-COVID, that's for a lot of companies kind of like falling off. It's starting to make its way back, I guess, a little bit. But the instability, I think you mentioned earlier, is like consulting can be seen as like a one-way street, and there's talks about it in the company too, where like pre 2015, this was like if someone was here longer than a year, that was amazing. Like this was just like a launching off point for your career. So you've both been here like multiple years at this point, which in the consulting world is a long time. So like, how have you shaped this like from just like a thing you do to into an actual career?
Part of it, I think, depends on your company, right? If you work for a bigger consulting firm where they kind of just eat you up and spit you out, and you are the people behind the scenes grinding it out and doing all this stuff. I think Greencastle, and probably a couple, other smaller-ish type firms, we kind of prioritize and put the people first, our workers first before the actual work itself. That is a huge help. And kind of having that commitment, coming from the military where work-life balance is non-existent, right? Let's be realistic. Like work came first always, and then life was whenever you could fit it in. But now where we kind of, starting at the CEO all the way down, that's the priority. It's work-life balance. That's the biggest thing that kind of, keeps me at Greencastle and kind of keeps my internal drive going, is because, hey, they put the trust in me to adult roles and, get the work done, but still like maintain my family to the point where like we're thriving as well. You can't beat that, and you can't find that anywhere else.
No, I haven't seen any place like this that handles it like that. Yeah.
It is a good point. Like my worst day as a consultant, or at any point in my time here working for Greencastle, like still a great day in the Army. Like,
Exactly.
Like, I go home or I sleep in a bed. Like, I don't sleep in the dirt anymore. Right. Like I don't not eat for a couple days or something.
I know what I'm going to eat next.
Like, I can just like get up and go to the bathroom or like put on whatever clothes I want. And go to work.
Generally warm when I want to be warm.
It is about baselining it. Like I guess that's a really good point. So.
Yeah. So I started consulting really like in the throes of COVID. So the first project I was on was completely remote work. I remember the first time I actually went to the client site was maybe like a year and a half after I'd been on the project. And it was just like a graveyard of like, there was like
cubicles
coffee
everywhere,
cups and like rotten bananas. Like people showed up to work and then left thinking they'd come back, and they just didn't come back.
My God.
So it was like, it was pretty comical. It smelled kind of funky. So like to kind of go from completely remote work to on that project, we would gather, co-locate during really critical times in the project, to now being, we co-locate once every month. So it's like in Philadelphia, Baltimore, or Chicago. So we kind of rotate. It's only 1 week a month, and even that sometimes feels a little taxing. But I'm just fortunate where my husband, he's really supportive, and we have a huge calendar on our house. It's skylight.
Same.
We literally have like an integrated schedule at our house, and we live and breathe by this schedule.
Type A's.
Yeah, we are type A's. So like, fortunately, I know well enough in advance when I have to be at the client's site where he can take off if he needs to, or we can kind of cover down on the logistics of our household. But yeah, like I love consulting, but I don't know if I'd be able to stay in it if I didn't have like the support that I do at home and at Greencastle, because I always feel like I have 12 different bosses, because there's your client bosses, your Greencastle bosses. What I do appreciate about Greencastle is they want you to prioritize the client, and there's no consternation if Greencastle takes the back seat. So Greencastle makes work-life balance possible with their requirements.
I kind of mentioned it before too. So my mom was in project management, and she went into consulting too, and she worked for a larger like medical-ish type company who implemented like medical software. And she was like the traditional, on a Monday, she would fly out to a client, and then on a Friday, she was flying back home like 2 or 3 weeks out of the month.
Yeah.
Wow.
And at that point, obviously her kids were all grown and out of the house. So it was my dad, her, and the dog, really. But just like to see the toll that took on just, the dog and my dad, right? Really, like to see that toll and kind of the toll it took on her. She was constantly in and out of airports, worrying about missing connecting flights. And
it's a lot of stress.
Exactly, right? And it just takes a toll on your body. Like you're in a different hotel room every night, for 3/4 of the month. Yeah. That's something that, up front when I was kind of looking into Greencastle, in the back of my mind, it's like, I cannot do that. I will not do that. And to like be able to come in and kind of, hear, what their policy was on, like within driving distance of your client, it was kind of like a reassuring thing. And I kind of just like sealed the deal of, hey, this could be, the place that I want to work at because, very specifically because of that.
Yeah. Now, this isn't on the radar right now, but I got a quick question based on all this. Why is it that Greencastle has a better method here for consultants than perhaps other places that you just talked about that put a lot of stress on you from traveling, things like that? Why do we think that Greencastle gets it right for their people?
I think the theory behind it is because we are all former military in some way, shape, or form. We had all put our dues in of being away from our families for training events and deployments year long. So now that we all made a decision to kind of, unless you're in the Guard, to step away from that, your priorities shift and family becomes more important than work. So, having the leadership team recognize that and having that as a priority of this will be our operating model and we will not deviate from this, I think is why we're so successful and why we can kind of bring top talent in because they know they're not going to travel or they know they're not going to have to travel. Yeah. If somebody, is a consultant and they want to travel, then, obviously Greencastle is probably maybe not a great fit for them. And there are other consulting firms out there that, can provide that kind of like bachelor lifestyle, but not for me.
Yeah. No, I agree.
Anymore.
It's that is funny. It's like there is that. It's available. Yeah. I have a buddy who left the military and did a JMO recruiting program at like a large consulting firm, and like that was life. It was like he flew out on a Monday, he flew home on a Thursday, and like
get those Hilton points.
Exactly. Yeah. It's really cool for a minute, and then like then you like get a significant other, and then like you're talking kids, and you're like, okay, maybe this isn't so cool. Like and there's like a natural progression to it where I think you're right. There's for some folks it's attractive. I think for a lot of us, for the exact reason you said, it's like really value time
been there,
at home.
Done that, never again.
Like I've had someone control my time. I'm not interested.
Remember when I came to Greencastle and they're like, oh, our company core values, we really, family comes first. And initial impression was like, that's a fun sound bit.
Yes.
But to see it kind of like executed and it's just nice. It's something I wasn't expecting for them to actually put family first. And this is one of the ways that they do that. And it does insulate you from the client, but if you want to go out, you can as well. So it really gives you the flexibility as a consultant to figure out with every season of life, like what you can afford to give the client and what you need to give your family.
Yeah,
Wow.
it's huge.
Yeah.
All right, I've got one last question. This is for the listeners from you all. So one tip for someone considering a career in consulting, your best piece of advice for them. That's high pressure, sorry.
That is a doozy.
Yeah.
Buckle up, Buttercup. The highs are high, the lows are low. Every season is fleeting.
That sounds rehearsed.
So yeah, I was going to say, I think we just got the headline right
I
there.
know,
The
right?
highs are high, the
That's
lows
the
are low.
quote.
That came from the heart.
I think for me, it would be, because we are kind of like the chaos coordinators. And she's right. Highs are high, lows are low, right? Maintaining that steady presence, that reliable presence, for your clients to lean on, and then also for the other vendors, really, right? Like that, I think has been extremely helpful for me coming into this. I obviously don't know everything. I don't know a lot of the specific industry type stuff. I'm very confident in like my specific project management and other skills. But kind of being that like sticky glue that pulls everybody together is where I found to be the most successful. And it's like, searching for the gaps or searching for problems that are maybe a little bit outside your wheelhouse or outside your lane, but doing it anyway because that provides the value to the client. And at the end of the day, like consulting is all about providing value, right?
Yeah.
Showing your value and helping your client. So I think kind of like, that gray area is where I operate, and that's kind of like where, I think, we can bring the most bang for our buck.
Yeah.
Wow, that's really cool. Nice.
Yeah.
Thank you to both of you for
Yeah.
taking the time. They're free. If you don't know and you're listening right now, they are very, very busy.
Yes.
But
Oh, thank you
as
so
a clear
much. Yeah.
said, so taking 35 minutes out of your day, I really
We'll bill you
appreciate
later.
it. So yeah, seriously, yes, straight to Lindsay.
Well, for everybody out there, make sure you like and subscribe, and put some comments on our on this so that we know kind of where your head is on this whole subject matter. And tune in next time. We put out new episodes every Tuesday. Kate, Amanda, thank you so much for being on the show.
Yeah.
Thanks for having us. This was fun.
Yeah.